Oh, no problem.
Okay, so let's think of a process. You know, let's do, Michael. How we're gonna, Gary and I are gonna interview you. Gary's gonna be the facilitator, and you're gonna be the person whose process we're trying to document. And let's do something related to cars. So let's do an oil change. Is that something you can do?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So before anything starts, before we even meet with Michael, you should probably already have an understanding of what the process is going to be. So oil change. We're going to title it, really, sometimes we title it the department, but it's really the process that we're going to be documenting. So, and it might be an entire department's process. So it might be, this is, it could be auto, maybe Michael has a company, and he's a mechanic, and we're going to do the oil change process. So, oil change process, you can add a little more detail for like Michael's mechanic shop or garage or whatever. So, make sure you're titling these so you understand what the process is, and kind of keep it somewhat specific. We'll change this and make them standardized at the end, again, kind of behind closed doors, once I start talking to you about how we clean all of these up. But for the time being, kind of make this detailed, give the map a detailed description of what's going to happen. And you can kind of like, all right, let's add 5 lanes. We want to get a lot of this legwork done before we even meeting with Michael. So boom, boom, boom. All right. And then again, what's the next? So, Joe, what's the next thing I should do?
Probably label your swim lanes.
Well, how do I know what they're going to be?
I mean,
what about changing it to simple? What about changing it to the simple theme?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, yeah. So make sure you've got your, kind of plot out a couple swim lanes, title it, to the best of your ability. You want to save it too, save it as, make sure you're always saving. Just want to save this to my desktop, but, very important to save it. Oil change process map. Okay, save. And then, create the foundation that you're going to use. So again, create a couple swim lanes, use the simple format, and now get ready, title it. And then now you're kind of ready to go in and sit down with Michael and not have to do any of this stuff beforehand. So, Gary, do you want to facilitate?
I'll interview Michael.
Okay, cool.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, so Michael, we've been brought in to help you optimize your oil change process at your facility. So, Michael, the first thing I'd like to do is, number one, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We feel pretty strongly we can help you out. Just to kind of do a level set, Michael, what we do is we typically try to identify all the stakeholders in this process. So obviously there's a mechanic, but I'm guessing somebody captures the client information, somebody books and schedules the appointments, and who are all the stakeholders, Michael? Could we get that lined up first? And again, you know it better than I. So who are the people that participate in the oil change process? Obviously the mechanic, but who else?
So the way that our garage is set up is we have 6 bays. 3 of them are dedicated to oil change. So when a person drives up, there's an individual out front that makes a determination of where that customer or the types of general services that customer is going to need and directs them to a lane.
All right, so that person, excellent, Michael, thank you. So that person up front or out front, or what do you call? Is that a salesperson? Is that what do you call that person?
Well, this person's basically the person that's they're kind of they don't have a true title because the mechanics rotate in that position, but this person is kind of, he's a bay director. Is probably a better indication, or bay assigner. That's good. Designer, director.
Okay. Okay,
And so what happens when a customer drives up, they look to see which bays are open and which bays have the, the shortest line, and they route people to a line in a bay. Because
okay,
generally,
gotcha.
especially on a Saturday, we can have 5 to 6 cars per lane waiting to get their oil change.
Okay. Okay,
Okay. And then once that person takes their car and puts it in that lane, they leave their keys in the car, and the bay director, they're going to escort them inside. And when they go inside, they're actually going to talk to the person at the front desk, who is our administrator. And that administrator, well, the administrator is going to be different from the cashier. The administrator is going to be the person that's going to log information about the car. So we will ask them about what's the make and model of your car and the year of your car, and we will log that into the computer.
all right,
And then
so,
we're going to have people that work the mechanics, that are the oil change technicians,
okay,
not to be confused with the tire change technicians and the people that are running the computer diagnostics, but we're going to have, in this specific case, oil change technicians.
okay,
And then we're going to have cashier. And we're also going to have, if you include technology, we have a pretty sophisticated system that we use, and you can just call that, our customer maintenance and service system.
okay,
So those are all the key players that for an oil change.
excellent. All right, so Michael, as you were, and thanks, that really helps, kind of get us organized to capture your process. And I apologize because you started to go into a little bit when you were telling me about each role, but the way we, this is pretty straightforward. What we want to do is start right at the beginning and capture every step from when the customer pulls into your facility to, when they drive out. So can you
Okay.
tell me where, I'm guessing where it starts is customer drives in.
Customer arrives at facility.
Customer arrives. Thank you. Okay. Gotcha. Nice, Sean. Okay. Michael, what's next?
The bay assigner director is going to route them to the appropriate bay in order to allow them to be processed in the fastest manner.
Okay.
We don't want a lane, we've got the 3 bays. We don't want one with 6 and 2 of them with 1. We want to make sure that we make people feel that they're moving through the process. So that assignment and allocation to the lanes, or routing to the lanes, is very important to make people feel that they're constantly or continuing to move forward.
Gotcha. And so, Michael, one of the things I heard you say earlier that I want to capture here is that I thought I heard you say, like, on Saturdays, this is a challenging role and maybe sometimes problematic, or maybe that's the wrong way of saying it. But I thought I heard you say that Saturdays are really are busy, and you have your maximum demand on Saturdays. Is that true? Are there other days? What are your most challenging days and times, Michael?
Saturday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is our peak time.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Peak time. That's what I was trying to get to.
That's when, between that and the people across the street at the car wash, we've got it going both ways.
Okay. So on that note, Michael, do you have problems? Do you have problems meeting that demand? And if so, how often?
Generally, we don't, because our scheduling takes into account that time frame. The only time we have problems is if last minute someone calls in sick and says, hey, I'm not going to be there today.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
what happens in that situation is that bay assigner may end up managing a lane. And then what happens is all of the people that are operating as a oil technician for the day are kind of responsible playing that role. Whenever they finish a car and they pop up and they see something going on, they kind of have to step in and start routing people because that one person's out.
Okay. So what I hear you say is on busy days, the oil change technician might have to perform double duty as bay assigner / director.
Correct.
Okay.
We got to keep people moving. And if someone doesn't show up for the day, we can't just have people, we don't want our traffic to spill out into the street. We want to make sure that people are there, because one of the things that bay director is doing as well, sometimes people just pull up and they say, hey, how long is it going to take for me to get into an oil change? They need to be able to understand and calculate based upon who's there, how quickly a person's going to be able to get in, because people may want to decide just to turn away, come back later.
Okay.
So, but that's a dual role that this person may have to play in the event that someone doesn't show up.
Okay. So Michael, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think this is kind of important for your business, and that's why we're here, to help you. When you say you don't think you often have problems meeting the demand, how do you know that? Do you have, do you have a method of capturing customer satisfaction?
We do have mailers that we send out. If a person gives us their email address, we'll ask for their email address when they're at the administrator. When the person's saying, hey, here's my name, here's my car, we get their address information. We'll ask them for their and we can get into that when we talk about when they get up to the administrator. But there's key information that we take, and one of those is email address, and it's kind of under the guise of, hey, we want to be of service to you. And there may be coupons that we would like to send out to you. But one of the things that we also do is we know from our system dates and times when people come in, and we can send them surveys to say, hey, on this date, you came and had your oil changed. Please rate our service. Okay.
Okay. So it looks like Sean is capturing this as we're talking. So when they walk into the office, the admin captures their key information, and you said part of that. So can you just quickly run through what that key information is, Michael?
Sure. Name, address, make, model, year.
All right. Hold on one sec.
Oh, so the admin's capturing, so captures
Key customer information.
key customer info, and typically, like, you can do it a call out, or you could just keep it in here in this kind of situation. So it's make, model,
Year
year,
and mileage.
mileage,
And if the
license plate, maybe.
license plate number, and if the
You also said email address, right?
an email address.
Name, phone
All right,
number,
so let's-
email address.
Let's pause right here because we got 5 more minutes, and I want to talk about some stuff. But that was great. Thank you, Michael and Gary, and we'll pick up kind of next time here. So ultimately, you can see kind of like Gary's just kind of having conversation and trying to dig deep into, what's the process, what are some of your issues, and again, this could be a lot more detailed too, right? In one component, right? The process actually could start before this, because how does the customer even know the facility exists? Well, maybe Michael has a promo running, right? So they see the promo online and they go, oh, I need an oil change, cool, it's a $15 off coupon or 20% off. And so that actually compels the customer to come to the store. Maybe they're not having, right? They're not busy, right? They're like struggling with getting customers in. And so he, in an attempt to attract customers, did that. So, again, that's the kind of thing, and I was talking to Joe about this, but that's going to relate to the scope of the process. So, right. So what's the scope of the process? And that's going to be very important too, to discern, right? We don't want to get too massively out of whack with what we're mapping. So I just want to know if the customer or the client wants to know what's the process between when the customer arrives and when the customer leaves. That's the process we're going to map. But if he's like, I want to know the whole process because we're having trouble, we're losing clients, what do we do? Well, you might go, well, man, okay, so, interesting, Michael, you said that it starts at customer arrives at facility, but how do they know that to come to your facility? Where'd they even find out? And he might go, oh yeah, you're right. Because we're struggling with clients, or we're struggling to attract people, we put out a coupon. And, do you ask them how they found out? No, not really. Well, okay, cool. So now we get a recommendation. Hey, survey your customers to determine what methods of attraction are working, right? So that's the kind of, you're just kind of trying to, this is really kind of using your own understanding of how processes work and applying it to processes at general, because most processes functionally operate the same way. Does that make sense? And Gary, Michael, is that, have anything to add to that topic?
Yeah, let me add one thing, Sean, because I like what you said. It's there, situationally, it can be a different approach. Point being, Sean mentioned sometimes it's a matter of discovery, and you realize that you need to expand your current process definition to include more. As he said, the example was it starts here. Well, no, it actually starts blah, blah, blah. So that might be the approach. Alternatively, you'll probably find yourself in a situation where the customer wants to talk about multiple processes, some of which are obviously out of scope. So on this one, the customer may say, it starts here, but I got to tell you, we have a marketing program that I just don't agree with. We just don't get the volume that we should. And I've seen when I used to work at blah, but you're like, okay, so you put a call out there that says opportunity for improvement, expand scope, or explore additional statement of work to evaluate process XYZ. So it's, I guess what I want to say is it's situational. It might be that you expand this process flow definition. It might be that you put a call out in there that says opportunity for improvement. Explore, evaluate additional processes or sub-processes.
Yeah. So Sean had mentioned, and this is what, in this type of thing. So Sean had mentioned, you might ask them about coupons. They might tell you that this Saturday between 10 and 2 is because of a coupon issue, because everyone brings their coupons on Saturday. And the person might say, the last place I worked, coupons were always Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the middle of the week to kind of balance out that Saturday, but we don't do that here.
Yeah.
So being able to have that dialogue, and people will offer up, especially if they've worked in other areas or other places where they have experienced something maybe a little more efficient, they'll offer information up that we should capture as opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great example.
your core role here is going to be documenter of the process, but you're essentially an investigator, right? Your ability to be good at this is going to be predicated on how well you can firstly discern how a process works at large, and then ask questions, investigate where issues may exist, and try to get them to kind of, because they're not going to give it to you, a lot. Some people are really good, actually. Some clients would be really good at like giving you the information you need. Some will be like, they don't understand what you're looking for, right? They don't even know that there's a problem. They might think it's great, it's peachy, so they're not going to concede any information. And so it's your job to kind of investigate and get them to concede some of that information. And so it's really the act of being an interrogator and an investigator. But from a general like flow kind of standpoint, again, you're going to be using call outs, and someone like Gary's going to be interviewing, and and again, I was doing it because I'm familiar with it, but he might even tell you what to write in some instances. Like they might say something really complicated, and then you have to go, oh man, I don't even know how to put that into words. Let's wordsmith that. So Gary, you and Gary might go, Gary, how do I say that? You go, oh, let's say this, and they go, yeah, that's right. Again, because if they've done it, especially people who've done this forever, they have this thing called tacit knowledge, which is they kind of do it intrinsically or based on instinct, or they don't even think about it anymore. And so they kind of have this internal knowledge that they don't even understand that they have anymore. And so you kind of have to get them. They don't explain things like they're talking to a 5-year-old. They explain things like they're thinking in themselves. And so you sometimes have to help them articulate what they're doing and put it into layman's terms. And so that's another part of the challenge. But all right, well, it's 7:05. So
Sean, can I just add one thing?
Yeah,
there?
absolutely.
One of the things too is you will run into people that will say, I don't think in terms of process. And I had this in Arizona. This woman's like, I just don't think that way. And you have to kind of go backwards sometimes for these people and really help them to understand and visualize what they're doing. Because it's like, for some people, it's just muscle memory. They're just doing things. And articulating it is not easy sometimes.
Yeah.
So could I add? So Sean you brought something up that really triggered a thought of mine. And I know we're over, but real quick, 2 key things to keep in mind. One, you're going to deal with people, especially in the government sector. You're going to deal with, there's more, but let's say there's basically 2 kinds of people. There's the people that are just itching for an opportunity to tell someone all the problems and opportunities to improve. Those are the wonderful people to deal with, and you'll meet a lot of them. There's other people that are simply stated worried about performance issues being associated with process performance issues being associated with them, and they won't be very forthcoming. And so number one, you're going to easily and obviously meet those 2 kinds of interview and interact with those 2 kinds of people. The other thing to keep in mind, and very relevant, is we're almost always brought in situations where no one knows the entire process. So there's someone who knows their swim lane, but they frankly don't know much of anything about the other. And so what happens is we wind up assembling an overall overarching continuous process that most people have never seen. And it's important when you're dealing with one of the stakeholders, it's important to continuously, as Sean said, act as that investigator. And when they say, what, we never have an issue, there's a step that comes up and you're like, man, I got to figure, I'm dying to know how many problems they have with it. And they go, no, we never have problems. You want to capture that. You're like, well, why? Capture that because when the next person in the swim lane, and it may be different meetings, probably will be oftentimes, the next person is going to go, when they review it, they're going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. That thing is always screwed up. I don't know. I can see, okay, who said, okay, I got it. But you want to capture these things because that is very oftentimes what happens. Someone's unwilling to share the unvarnished truth, and you want to capture that, not to put them on the spot, but that's how we uncover these things. And when it gets printed and plastered on the wall, those kind of things, when a multitude of people walk up and review this diagram, they're going to mark it up and go, downstream we see this error rate 85%, whereas captured on the map it says 0. So not to belabor the point, but just wanted to call out those two things.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's called, what he's talking about is a thing, Joe, we're talking about like terminology to use, and what he's talking about is this thing called siloing. So they perform a process in their own silo versus understanding the entire process as a whole. And so one of the value props we bring as an organization, remember that word siloing, because a core value prop that we provide is we break down silos, right? We let everybody understand, we help everybody understand what everyone does and how their process affects other processes. So like what Gary was saying is that some people might say, hey, Sean in admin is always messing up this crap and it's ridiculous. But maybe admin has, the technology doesn't work, or they're running into some other obstacle or some other bottleneck that's causing it to work that way. And so you can kind of you can actually fix that frustration by saying, well, have you ever looked at their process? Now you can, right? We've mapped it for you. And they go, oh, I didn't even know that they did that. And so that's one of our core value props is we break down silos. And as you're talking to customers or clients, that's going to be a key component here is, hey, you didn't know that because you're siloed, right? You work in your own silo. So before we go, I wanted to say one quick thing. So the other thing you might run into is sometimes you might have a line that's like kerfuffled like this. And sometimes you can fix it by just arrowing like that, arrowing over. So I just use the arrow keys to like kind of fix it. But sometimes it doesn't fix like that as cleanly as that. So what you have to do is you have to grab, whoops, see, that's part of the issue. Well, you should probably get as close as possible. But what you do is you grab all of the, that's still not going to do it. You grab the processes in the row, and then you go to a line. It's in the home tab in the ribbon. You go to a line, and then you have these two things we use all the time, either a line center or a line middle. So for things that are vertical, up and down, you're going to do a line center, and that's going to make the line straight automatically. And then for stuff like this, you have to be careful that you grab everything in the row, though. So it can get a little long, but you have to make sure you're grabbing everything in the row, and then you can align middle, and that will bring everything into the middle. And then you can like kind of move it up and put it in the middle of the thing. So another thing you use a lot are the arrow keys. So keep that in mind as you're making a process map. So before we go, I want to give everyone homework. So before the next session, I want you guys to map a process that you do on a daily basis. It can be anything. It can be getting out of bed and going to work. It could be something you do at work, right? It could be making a cup of coffee, and try to apply what you learned today using Visio. You'll add some call outs, right? Keep what occurs in the process box, but add some call outs that augment what is going on, but maybe some opportunities, right? Maybe you're like, I always wake up late, right? Or whatever. If you do your morning routine, or I never have time to brush my teeth, that's an opportunity. So that's not actually happening in the process. That's actually not happening in the process, but that's an opportunity for improvement. So, before we meet next time, kind of map a process out. Again, set it up like we set it up. Have it be, a simple, use a simple theme, make the call outs, title it, practice making Visio process boxes, again, and start to think of how you can get this, how you can start doing this quickly and cleanly, so that when you're in front of a client, it's kind of, more automatic, and you can kind of start thinking more about how to improve the process, because the real art, as Gary likes to say, the real art comes in with asking the right questions interrogating sounds harsh, but interviewing the client, getting them to reveal what they do in the process, getting them to reveal what they think is an issue, and then kind of collecting that and tabulating into a single unified process map. So the easy stuff is really this documentation, right? It's the hard stuff is how do you ask the right questions? How do you really understand a process to its core so that you can articulate it and make it so that it's a massively beneficial thing to both the organization and us, the organization so that they can see what they do, and for us so that we can see how we can improve it so we can add value in the form of recommendations